to healthcare. Can Nigeria significantly reduce pharmaceutical imports by 2025? As part of efforts to achieve drug security in Nigeria, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, said it has set a target of cutting the country's present 70% drug imports to about 30% by 2025. Similarly, the agency said it had made stringent efforts at winning the battle against the importation of illicit drug and unwholesome food and unregulated products in the last 4 years. To discuss these headlines further, we're joined by Ugo Aliogo, who is a public policy analyst. Ugo, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's start with NAFDAC and the plan to cut the present 70% imports that we have to 30. Can they do it? What do you think of their plans?
I've read through the whole thing. Yeah. Very beautiful. Yes,
I think I know what you're going to say next. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You read it? Okay.
Yeah, so I've read through the whole thing. Very beautiful. Yeah. And there's a timeline of 2025.
Yeah.
But we have to fix. There are things we need to put in place.
Okay.
This is an economy where you don't have steady power. So part of the plan is to have pharmaceutical companies manufacture drugs.
Yeah.
And then that will now make us sufficient in that area, promote drug security. So it's not going to be local companies alone. There are going to also be foreign companies like Emzo International and what have you.
Yep.
You don't have steady power. You need to address the power problem. Globally, countries across Europe, they are moving from fossil fuel to green energy.
Okay.
Now, means that they are trying to have reduce greenhouse gas emission. So by so doing, they are trying to attain greenhouse gas. They are trying to address the power problem in terms of migrating from fossil fuel to green. So we don't have steady power. We need to address that.
Right.
And then if you now have those companies established in Nigeria, start producing in Nigeria, it means the cost of production is going to spike up. And if the cost of production is going to spike up, it's going to affect the product. It's going to affect price.
Right.
And it affect price, it means the an average Nigerian has to pay double
for those drugs.
For those drugs.
Right.
So we have to address the power problem. And then healthcare infrastructure. We don't have healthcare infrastructure. So in getting healthcare infrastructure, it will make the production more efficient, it will make it more faster. And then we can go into local manufacturing of healthcare infrastructures. So we can design standards, we can design modules, and then we'll have Innocent.
We had the CEO of Innocent on the show last week. Yeah, go ahead.
So you have Innocent.
Yeah.
So you can give Innocent the modules, the standard you want. I say produce XYZ.
Right.
So let's go into local manufacturing. So we don't have to import some of those healthcare infrastructures from Europe. We can produce in Nigeria and then give him a standard. Say we want XYZ.
Right.
This is what we want. So we'll have to fix some of these things. So apart from having the issue of infrastructure, you now talk about manpower.
Okay.
This is an economy where health workers, medical personnel are not well remunerated. We don't have healthcare infrastructures. They are not well remunerated. So as a result, it's increasing the brain drain every year. So you have to also look at that.
Okay.
You have to also look at that. So there are a lot government has to address. This is on the face of lawmaking.
Okay.
Implementation is always the challenge. So how far have we fared in the area of implementation? So if we now fix these things, then it will now be a lot easier. We can even have comparative advantage in that area. And then if we have comparative advantage in the area of drug production, we can present it as something comparative for African continental free trade. A country like India have built comparative advantage in the area of drug production.
Right.
Globally.
That's why so much medical tourism.
So that's why medical tourism.
Right.
So if we achieve that, we can even drive medical tourism in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And then if we're able to improve in drug production, it will now tax the government to improve in healthcare infrastructure.
Okay. So in that case, since you mentioned, what do you make of the Chris Ngige and the discussions around the decision soon on remuneration of health? That you mentioned it, so that's part of it, increasing their pay for health workers. That is tied to
that's tied to
this as well.
The hazard allowance.
Yeah, the hazard allowance, exactly. Thank you.
I don't think we should, as a progressive nation,
yeah,
I don't think we should be discussing the issue of hazard allowance by now.
It should have been taken care of since.
It should have been taken care of since.
Right.
Even during the COVID, the doctors were among the frontline workers during the COVID that fought this COVID in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Many of them lost their life in the process. They got infected, they lost their life, and all of that. What is government plan? It shouldn't be food dragging. Government should not be food dragging at this stage to address the issue of hazard allowance. It should have been something we're taking care of. For instance, in the United Kingdom, there's strong healthcare insurance for medical personnel. because they understand their importance. So for me, what I feel is we've not come to appreciate the role of doctors in this country.
Which is why they are leaving.
So which is why they are leaving.
Right.
So there was a footage some time ago in this year where doctors were applying for jobs for medical jobs in Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
They are applying for medical jobs in the United Kingdom. They are applying for across the world.
Yep.
Because we have not come to appreciate. So the first thing is to appreciate their role. When you appreciate their role, the issue of payments, the issue of remuneration will not be something that will be for dragging.
What if, just to play devil's advocate, what
Yes.
if the government says they don't have the money? Because, look, if you think about the strikes that have been going on with in the education sector, with the universities and so on, now this health, it's always an issue of, even with the railway workers, we covered that as well.
Yes.
We had a special report on railway workers, striking as well. At each point, it's always about money and the fact that the government says...
If you say government will talk about not having money,
yeah,
in the national budget, the yearly budget, what is the money voted for healthcare?
gotcha. Yeah, I get you. Okay.
So what's the money voted for healthcare?
Yeah.
So that's the issue. So it starts from there. The money voted for what is the structure of our primary healthcare centers across Nigeria?
Serious needs improvement.
What is the structure of our government hospitals across Nigeria? There was a time where our teaching hospitals were top-notch across Africa.
Even the world.
In the world.
Yeah,
for instance, UCH Ibadan
was
top-notch in the 70s, in the 60s.
Right.
It was top-notch. What happened? It was a result of decay and gross negligence by government. Until we address the issue of decay, until we address that negligence, it will continue to degrade. We're going for medical tourism in India. We're going for medical tourism in Dubai. What have those people done right? They have made deliberate efforts to improve healthcare delivery and then improve the budget. What's the budget to healthcare sector? What's the budget to improve healthcare? What is the remuneration to doctors? So until we address some of those things, it will remain where it is. We will continue to have an institution, the healthcare institution, being placed in the sidelines until you bring it to the front burner. Remember that the doctors, they played an integral part in addressing COVID.
Right.
Many of them lost their life, even with our healthcare facilities that were not, our healthcare facilities across the country that were not properly equipped.
Right.
They still did their best. So how much, and then Nigerian doctors, they are performing very well across the world. So it has to be a deliberate policy. It has to be a commitment from government. And then we can look at an arrangement where you bring in the private sector collaboration. Since government can't do it alone, we look at an arrangement where you bring in the private sector and build a strong partnership with the private sector to improve healthcare delivery.
It can be done. Can it be done? So back to the pharmaceutical thing.
Yes.
You kind of answered the question, but I don't know if you really get it directed. So can they 2025? Can they reduce those imports? I mean, you laid out the power, you laid out the increasing
infrastructure,
all
increasing pay remuneration.
Can you do that in 3 years with an election coming up? And is it feasible? I have doubts. Let me just put it right there.
I also have doubts.
Yeah.
It's not something very feasible, but if there's commitment, we can achieve half the goal. And then again, has to do with continuity of that policy. So when the new government enters, would they continue with that policy? Or would they not push it aside and bring in their own? Because it's about policy appraisal. So we'll do policies to get appraisal from the World Bank, to get appraisal from WHO, to get so it's about continuity.
Yeah.
So, but if there's commitment, if there's sincerity of purpose from government, we can achieve half the target before 2025. And then the new government can continue. Having seen the laudable work that has been done, the new government can continue because it's about achieving drug security. And achieving drug security will go a long way to address a lot of things. To address the issue of fake drugs, to address the issue of unregulated drug producers. It would go a long way to sanitize the healthcare system in Nigeria. And if the healthcare system in Nigeria is sanitized, it would affect the overall good of the system in Nigeria. Well said.
Well said. Agriculture, we spent so much time on healthcare. Very quickly, the Karima Babangida saying that the agricultural sector in Nigeria has become attractive for local and foreign investment. How do you appraise those comments? Do you think the agricultural sector in Nigeria is attractive for foreign direct investment?
The sector in the 70s, 80s. Permit me for going back to history.
Everybody loves the 70s, 60s.
Because those are the glorious years.
Best times, right?
Yes, the glorious years.
Yeah.
70s, 80s, 60s.
Yeah.
Agriculture used to be our economic mainstay.
Right.
As a matter of fact, there's a skyscraper in Ibadan that was built from the proceeds of cocoa. Nigeria was a net exporter of many agro-produce.
Right.
Today, the discovery of oil has made the country to forget the agric industry. It can be attractive. The sector can be attractive. But what is the commitment of government to that sector?
Right.
If you go to, for instance, when I was in the UK, I realized that in the UK, food is one of the cheapest commodities in the United Kingdom. They have built food security. This is a country where food security is a challenge. We have not attained food security in Nigeria.
What's food inflation?
There's food inflation in Nigeria.
18%, yeah.
There's increase in food. There's increase in price of food. There's increase in price of agro commodities because we have issue of insecurity. So if we address the issue of insecurity, we reduce the issue of food inflation. So it's attractive. Now again, that has to do with what are areas who have comparative advantage. Okay. What are the commodities we want to present for investment? What are the commodities we want to present for partnership? For instance, Nigeria is a country where we are one of the largest exporters of cocoa beans in Africa and in the world, but we don't have a local chocolate processing factory.
Makes sense. Got you.
So it's identifying the key commodities for investment, identifying the key commodities where we can build comparative advantage. So that's what is key. And then when you identify them, you set up framework, you bring in partners. Private sector is key because they have the funding. Yeah. So government is to build the enabling environment, the ease of doing business, and address all other fundamentals. Yeah. And then when you address all other fundamentals, you bring the private sector, they bring in the funding, and then they headline such initiatives. So it's very attractive. Again, what is the commitment of government to that sector? So because it's more, talk is cheap. So much
action.
Yes, action, implementation. Yeah. So much of what he's saying is on the angle of policy making, conversations. What is the implementation? What is the action being taken to achieve food security, to improve that sector? We can drive comparative advantage across agro-allied. We can decide to leave oil and focus on agriculture, and we'll do better. We have everything. We have the arable land. We have the manpower. We have everything to achieve food security in Nigeria. We shouldn't be, at this point, be facing the issue of food inflation.
Great stuff. Ugo Aliogo, Public Policy Analyst.